Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to Montenegro, a country of mountains and the sea, a place that captivates with its beauty and authenticity. My name is Miloš Trivić. I am Director of Examination Center of Montenegro, and it is my honor to be your host today. At the very beginning, I would like to express my gratitude to IEA for the trust shown in selecting Montenegro as the host of this important event and the release of results. I also extend special thanks to the Ministry of Education, Science and Innovation of Montenegro for their continued support in the organization. On this occasion, it is my great pleasure to invite the distinguished Minister of Education, Science and Innovation of Montenegro, Professor Dr. Anđela Jakšić-Stojanović, to address us. Minister, the floor is yours.
Dear ladies and gentlemen, partners and colleagues, it is my great pleasure and honor to welcome you today at the international release of the TIMSS Longitudinal Study results. This event carries particular importance for us, not only because it provides us with valuable international insights, but also because it comes in a year when the Examination Center celebrates 20 years of dedicated and responsible work. The Examination Center has become one of the key pillars of our educational system. Through its commitment to high standards, independence, and methodological precision, it has earned the trust of national institutions and international partners. The results we are presenting today clearly show why that trust is well placed. For the Ministry, studies such as TIMSS and PEARLS are essential tools. They enable us to build education policies on facts, not assumptions. The data collected through these international assessments represents the foundation of new educational reform strategy 2025-2035. This demonstrates our commitment to creating policies that are evidence-based, transparent, and aligned with global standards. The TIMSS is really important for us because it retests the same group of students within a short period of time. I am pleased to note that the results show meaningful progress among our students. This is a confirmation that the efforts invested by teachers, schools, and the wider education community have already delivered results. It is also a recognition of the hard and devoted work of the Examination Center, which implemented both 2023 and 2024 study with full professionalism. Allow me to express sincere gratitude to International Association for the Evaluation of Educational Achievement for their continuous support and for the confidence that show in Montenegro. Our cooperation over the years has strengthened our capacity to analyze and improve our educational system. Dear colleagues, thank you very much. I would also like to extend my appreciation to all schools, teachers, students, and parents who participated in the process. Their engagement makes Montenegro a credible and a reliable partner in international assessment. Ladies and gentlemen, the results we are sharing today give us optimism and motivation. They show that Montenegro has the knowledge, the institutions, and the dedication needed to continue improving its educational system. The Ministry will remain a strong supporter of Examination Center, recognizing its crucial role in ensuring that our policies are rooted in data, objectivity, and long-term vision. Thank you for your attention, and I wish you a productive work today. Thank you very much.
Yes.
Thank you very much. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much for that motivational and supportive speech. It's really good to hear that you're still supporting, and not only by supporting us with this beautiful event. A few housekeeping rules to start with. Please turn off your phones into silent mode, whereas we are live streaming this event. It will be recorded at the IEA YouTube channel. The chat function will be open so that any attendees can post any questions through the event. Also at the Q&A session, there will be a floating microphone in the room to answer or post questions. So, after these housekeeping rules, I would like to say, ladies and gentlemen, esteemed colleagues and distinguished guests, both present in the room and online, it is with most great pleasure and honor to welcome you to this international launch of the TIMSS Longitudinal Study here in Montenegro. Once again, thank you very much for hosting it. Today is a very important moment for all of us who care deeply about understanding learning, improving education systems, and ensuring, not the least, that every child in the world have the opportunity to flourish and become educated citizens. TIMSS Longitudinal is an innovation in our field. For decades, we have measured learning in mathematics and science as single points in time across independent samples and populations, still producing solid and comparable evidence that has shaped educational policies across the world. But with this new design, we took a further step. We follow the same students over 2 years, allowing us to understand not only what they know, but how they grow. In mathematics and science, and there are changes in their experiences as well. Educationalists are well aware that not all pupils experience the same learning gain over time in schooling, but we have until now not been able to distinguish learning gains over time for the actual pupils on an individual level. This is new. So this innovation in our studies brings us closer to answering one of the most fundamental questions in educational research. What does 1 year of schooling actually mean? But not the least for whom, how it is experienced, and what are the differences between different groups of students. This question is not only technical, about progressions, benchmarks, or even effect sizes. It's also philosophical. 1 year of schooling is 1 year of a child's life. It is a year of cognitive, social, and emotional development. The phenomenological sociologist Alfred Schutz reminds us that time is lived biography, not just measured by the clock. So for a 4th grade student, 1 year is a large share of their short-lived history and therefore feels long, intense, and developmentally most significant. For a teacher or an adult, the same year is only a small segment of a much longer biography. So even when teachers and students share the same school calendar, they do not, in social terms of time, inhabit the same lived social length of time. Understanding that year for a 4th or an 8th grader is therefore understanding something essential about children's education and the world life that they take up most of children's everyday life, getting a much richer and fine-grained understanding of educational pathways and changes in issues like learning, belonging, from an individual perspective. From this perspective, the fraction of the lived biography in terms of what Schulz calls inner time is even different between 4th and 8th graders. TIMSS Longitudinal offers new ways of approaching this social and educational development. It helps us understand classroom practices, curriculum pathways, and learning environments not as static features, but as conditions shaping trajectories over time. It tells us about systems that sustain progress and about those where inequalities widen as students grow older, having experienced more lived biography. And importantly, it allows us to examine how improvements or stagnations form long before they appear in later assessments. But none of this would have been possible without the countries participating in this first cycle of TIMSS Longitudinal. You have taken on an ambitious and demanding task. You have built infrastructure for following students and schools, engaged teachers and families, and committed yourself to a long scientific endeavor. I would also like to express our thanks to the European Union for supporting this study by means of finance, but not the least the interest in studies with a longitudinal ingredient. Your effort and support enrich the global field far beyond your own borders and national educational systems. Even for countries not in the study, I would say yet, the insights that arise from TIMSS Longitudinal will be profoundly relevant for others. I can say that already on Friday I have an open speech in the parliament in Denmark where I will draw on the insights from this study in order to have some ideas of a school year of learning in the Nordic. The results will help us understand how learning develops, how teaching matters across time, and how policy can better support continuity and stability in children's educational trajectories. IEA's mission has always been global, quality education for all children worldwide. And this study speaks directly to that mission and builds on long-standing credibility of TIMSS while introducing carefully designed innovations. And as a chair of IEA, I want to express my sincere gratitude to all participating countries, research team, the European Union, school leaders, teachers, and above all, the students who offered their time and made this study possible. Your contributions helps us understand not just test scores, but learning as lived experience across time. Let us also use this event not only to hear about the findings, which I can promise you is very interesting, but also to reflect on the deeper meaning of them. When we follow children over several years, we are reminded that learning is never one moment in time. It is a journey, and our responsibility as an international research community is to illuminate that journey with care and rigor. So thank you very much, and I look forward for the discussion. But first I will give a few words about the next speakers. It is an enormous pleasure to introduce to you the speakers. First, we will have the presentations of the highlights from the TIMSS 2023 Longitudinal International Report on Results, and it will be presented by Professor Matthias von der Wier, Executive Director at TIMSS and Pearls International Study Center in Boston College. And Matthias von der Wier is a professor in education at the Lynch School of Education and Human Development at Boston College, and also serves as the Executive Director of the TIMSS and Pearls International Study Center. Then after this presentation, we will hear from Dr. Dirk Hasted on the unique value of longitudinal data. As the Executive Director of IEA, Dr. Hasted have overseen the operation studies and services and executes on daily basis on behalf of the General Assembly IEA's strategic vision. In addition, he develops and maintains relationships with member countries, researchers, policymakers, and other key players. So, and then after the two presentations, we will have a Q&A, and then we will go into a break and have a panel later on the longitudinal results. But first, I would like to ask Milos to take the floor again and have a speak on the host behalf.
Dear ladies and gentlemen, distinguished representatives of institutions, colleagues, partners, and friends. It is my great pleasure that we have the opportunity today to gather for the international release of the TIMSS Longitudinal Study results. For the examination center, this event carries particular significance, not only because of its international importance, but also because it is taking place in a jubilee year in which we mark 2 decades of institution's work. 20 years of dedicated work, cooperation, development, and advancement of Montenegro's education system. TIMSS, a study conducted by the International Association for the Evaluation of Educational Achievement, is one of the key international mechanisms for assessing students' knowledge in mathematics and science. In 2023, the Examination Center carried out the TIMSS study for 4th grade students in primary schools. Just 1 year later, in 2024, we implemented a special cycle, TIMSS Longitudinal. This involves retesting the same students using the same task, enabling us to clearly observe their actual progress over the course of a single school year. These results we achieved in the longitudinal study are encouraging. We recorded progress among students, and this is an important message for everyone involved in the education systems: teachers, schools, policymakers, and also the students themselves. These results have been truly analyzed in the national report prepared by the Examination Center, which will serve as a valuable foundation for further analysis and recommendations. What I would particularly like to emphasize is that TIMSS is not just another international study for Montenegro. It has become a key tool in shaping educational policies. In recent years, the data collected from TIMSS, but also from PEARLS and other international programs, has become the foundation of the educational reform strategy for the period 2025-2035. This strategic document defines the directions for the development of our education system and is based precisely on objective measurements and internationally comparable indicators. Through its work, the Examination Center has become a reliable institution that ensures the quality, accuracy, and integrity of data. This is precisely why international partners, including IEA, recognize Montenegro as a country that is approaching the evaluation and improvement of educational policies with seriousness and commitment. Today's release of the results of the TIMSS longitudinal study is yet another confirmation of that trust and cooperation. I would like to take this opportunity to express my sincere gratitude to IEA for the professional support, expertise, and dedication they are providing us throughout all the phases of these extensive projects. I am pleased to announce that starting next year, Montenegro will also participate in their ICLS study, which measures students' computer literacy and digital competencies. This is an area of particular importance in a time of rapid technological change and one in which we aim to achieve results and of equally high quality as in other international programs. We also owe our gratitude to the Ministry of Education, Science and Innovation of Montenegro, which consistently recognizes the importance of international studies and is providing strong support for their implementation. Without their cooperation and understanding, processes on this complexity would not be possible. Ladies and gentlemen, we are making 20 years of Examination Center of Montenegro. In a year in which we have achieved more of significant results to date. We continue to build a system grounded on knowledge, objectivity, and integrity. We continue to invest in analytics, in the development of new approaches, and the international cooperation. Today, more than ever, we are aware that the quality of education depends on clear, reliable, and measurable data, and it's precisely the mission of the Examination Center. Thank you all for being with us today, and thank you for the trust and partnership we are building together. I am confident that today's event will mark yet another milestone in the continued development of Montenegro's education system. I wish you a very successful continuation of the program. Thank you.
Thank you, Mira. Thank you so much. Thank you. And, a gift from us to you.
Thank you very much. Thank you.
And now I will give the floor to Matthias. The floor is yours.
If I find my slides. Coming. Good, thank you. Okay, thank you very much for the nice introduction. Also, really a deep felt thank you for hosting us here. It's a beautiful place, and I really enjoyed walking around and seeing a little bit of the city and also a little bit outside the city. For all of you who attend virtually, it's a big mistake. You should come here. So next vacation here. It's so a great pleasure to be here, and I would like to, of course, introduce you to the big reveal. The highlights from the TIMSS International Report and Results. There's a lot more on the web, of course. I'm really just presenting a few highlights, and I will talk you through some of the achievement data and some of the relationships with some of the contexts of learning that we are always assessing. Christian already mentioned TIMSS is really an outstanding success. These kinds of data don't come along easily. It's really hard work to collect them, and it's really an outstanding achievement of all of the participating education systems to collect this data. So to find students again, to reassess them over a time of a year is not an easy project to take on. It was a very successful collaboration by the teams at Boston College, in Hamburg, in Amsterdam, at the national centers with our sampling partners. So we really are here to celebrate the results more than just to describe them. It was really great work done by all of those involved here. We put together a very interesting database using state-of-the-art methodologies to make it as useful as can be, and put together this international report to essentially show the results at a very high level, but we are very sure that these data will be used for years to come. We have, as some of you might know, 9 participating education systems taking the assessment or retaking the assessments from grade 4 to grade 5. So that is Georgia, Italy, Jordan, Korea, Kosovo, Montenegro, North Macedonia, Slovenia, and Sweden. 3 participating education systems also did this again in grade 9, coming from grade 8. So that would be Jordan, Korea, and Sweden. And the TIMSS 23 longitudinal target population includes everybody who was selected to participate in the TIMSS 23 assessment. And we try to follow as many students as possible and reassess them the following year. The achieved samples are of really high quality. We were able, or better, all the countries were able to follow the students and reassess the vast majority of them. And that gives us really great data to compare student learning over a school year. So these kinds of advanced analysis I can show you here today. I can really only focus on the high-level results, but again, there will be more reports out. I'm pretty sure a lot of people will download the data and will start analyzing the data. Oops. The report that we released today is a web-based interactive report. There are downloads in more traditional formats, Excel, PDFs, etc., available. we are talking mainly about achievement results and a few select contextual results, but there's a lot more in the report, so I really invite you, and we have a QR code at the end of the presentation to look into that and to then really explore and hopefully get interested in further analyses. The contextual data, as Christian mentioned, tell more of a story than just looking at how much learning gain we see. That tells us how it relates to how students feel good at school. They feel they belong, they are well received, they are understood in school. Do they like what they learn? Do they feel they get clear instruction? So there are a lot more context rather than only looking at, okay, what was achieved in the end on average. There's a lot more to the story. We also have data about the parents, again, over years of time, in the 4th grade at least, 4th and 5th grade. We have data from teachers who talk about what they do. We have data from the school principals to, again, deepen the insights that we can gain from the study. So I will show a little bit about the achievement results first and then move into some very selective views on the context data. So a big moment here. What we see in this graph is quite complex. So we see the difference between the 2023 assessment and the 2024 assessment between grade 4 and 5 for all the participating education systems. We ordered this by the magnitude of the average growth. So you will see Slovenia, then followed by Korea, Italy, Sweden, Georgia, Montenegro, Kosovo, North Macedonia, and Jordan. You will see in light blue the average achievement in 2023. You will see in darker blue the average achievement in 2024 and the difference between them. Just as a highlight, what you see is it's not the same. The achievement was not the same in 23 across countries, obviously. The achievement was not the same in 24, but also the difference is not the same. So students grow at different rates across countries. But even within country, when you look at the data, I will show a little bit later, some students grow more, some students grow less, so there's always some variation. But across countries, you already see growth depends on the country, probably on the curriculum, on how it's implemented, maybe on the jumps you make from year to year. So some changes between grade 4 and grade 5 might be more ambitious than others. So we cannot say that everything is the same, which would be a surprise, honestly, also in international studies. And that's part of why we do these international studies, right? Let me do the same for grade 8 and 9. Here we have 3 countries only, but we still have valid results on the TIMSS international scale for grade 8. And we see a slightly different picture. If you go back, Jordan was here listed as the country with, on average, least growth, whereas Korea and Sweden were pretty much high up on the list. That reverses. So we cannot compare the magnitude between grade 4 and grade 8, but we can compare the order to say, okay, Sweden and Korea were among those that gained the most on average in grade 4 and grade 5. That is different in grade 8 to grade 9. Here, Jordan actually outpaced that growth. So even there, we see it's first not the same across countries, but then it's also not the same across grades. There are different effects going on, and that is something that can be delved into by means of all our context data, by means of all the data we collect in addition to only the mathematics and science achievement. Okay, similar picture in science. Again, there's differences across countries. The growth depends on initial state, on then the outcome in 24, and the difference defines the average growth. And again, also here we see that the order is not necessarily the same. The same also between subjects. So just to make sure that we really understand that we have to look into what's going on in the countries. We have the results on the international scale, but we also have to go back to all the factors that might go on within country that might determine how much growth can be expected. Let me go to a slightly different display. These displays are also in the international report site, but that's what we call infographics. They give just a high-level overview. The tables and other displays give much more detailed data on all these different statistics that we are presenting. Here we present the difference between girls and boys over both years. So what you see is the average difference between girls and boys. If it's directed to the left, the girls scored higher. If this bar is directed to the right, the boys scored higher. You see in Jordan in both years, girls scored higher. In Italy, on the other end of the list, in both years, the boys scored higher. And then you have decreasing differences between years and between countries, of course. In North Macedonia, we actually have no difference to speak of between boys and girls in both years. And then in Georgia, we have small difference. In Montenegro, slightly larger differences where boys scored higher in mathematics, and then going up to larger and larger differences. For grade 8 and 9, we have a similar graph, of course. Again, in Jordan, girls scored higher in both grades, and then in Sweden and Korea was kind of smaller differences that also seem to be even smaller or even reverse than grade 9. But again, these are small differences, so we have to look at them more carefully. On the big difference side, again, also in science, we have Jordan with girls scoring higher in both grades. Boys scored higher in both grades in Italy and Korea, and in the rest of the countries, it was more or less a wash. Small differences in this or that direction. And then finally, again, in grade 8, 9, we have Jordan with girls scoring higher in both grades. In Sweden, girls scoring higher in 9th grade, interestingly, and whereas there was no difference in grade 8. And then in the Republic of Korea, we have a small effect of boys scoring higher in both years. Let me lead you a little bit to a slightly different display. One of my favorites, actually, not very easy to read, but hopefully easy enough. We are taking our international benchmarks as a very good benchmark, for lack of a better word, to describe what students know and can do. These are fixed positions on the scale. So the advanced benchmark is at 625 points on the international TIMSS scale. High benchmark is on 550. The intermediate benchmark on 475. The low benchmark is located at 400. Each of these benchmarks is explained in the TIMSS reports in terms of what students can do at these different levels. That gives us a more qualitative description of the scale. That gives us a reference to understand how much of the problems we present in TIMSS can be solved by students, what types of problems. And here in the longitudinal case, we have an additional data point that also shows us how much growth we can expect across all these benchmarks. So students who reached the low benchmark, are there more students who reach the low benchmark in grade 5? We see, for example, taking out here, looking at Montenegro, we see a growth in how many students reach the low benchmark, how many students reach the intermediate benchmark, the high benchmark, and even in the advanced benchmark. So in pretty much all countries, you see that students all over at all levels of competencies tend to move up to hopefully then reach the next higher level. We already saw in the general results that on average, all countries show learning gains, but also here we see that they tend to reach higher benchmarks in the next grade. So they're able to solve higher level problems at a greater proportion. And that is pretty much true also in grade 8 and 9. That is also the case in science. What we see again from grade 4 to grade 5, if you look at the coloring here for advanced to low benchmark, these bars show you that essentially the percentages of students reaching the low, the intermediate, high, and advanced benchmark increase unless there's already a maxing out that you essentially have some students reaching the low benchmark, or some countries where almost everybody reaches the low benchmark. Finally, in science, we see again the same picture. The benchmarks tend to move in the right direction in the sense of more students being able to solve higher order problems or more higher order problems, or moving up into those areas where they can say, yeah, we have basic skills for a large proportion of students from grade to grade. So, as a little summary, we saw learning gains in all the countries at different rates in mathematics and science. We saw that boys and girls have relatively comparable rates of growth between grades 4 and 5, and that also the differences between girls and boys, for when there were bigger differences, remained very similar. There was some movement when you looked at differences across grades where the starting point was smaller differences. So we will certainly go back to these results and see countries digging deeper in their national reports. Hopefully also other researchers will pick it up, and we'll look more into determinants of what might actually have to do with these types of differential growth patterns. What we saw overall is that there were quite big, there's no direct comparison to be made here between grade 8 and 9 and grade 4 and 5. This has to do with, we are testing the same mathematics and science broadly, but we are using very different tests, of course. We saw more pronounced differences between the countries in grade 4 and 5 than between grade 8 and 9, so there were smaller differences, what it seemed like, at least. We also have fewer countries there, so certainly something to look more into. We certainly see that students don't learn at the same rates. There's variation both in the distribution of growth as well as in the distribution of achievement, both across countries, which I've shown, but certainly also within countries by context of learning. Let's see whether I can start this wonderful thing. A tiny bit of a preview of the website. So what you see here is we have interactive displays where you can select an exhibit, where you can move between different output formats. You can find different ways of sorting the tables by country, by achievement level, ascending, descending, or growth difference. And you might also be able to select countries if you're just interested in a subset of countries. So these little tools allow a little bit more of an interactive view at the data. Let me try to get to the next one. Here we see also the graphical response, the graphical displays for the growth patterns. We can again sort by ascending, descending, by grade level, by different percentile. And we have on the display the percentiles of change, where we have the confidence interval located in the middle, and then the 5th, 25th, 75th, and 95th percentile. Again, everything can be downloaded in Excel and PDF, as well as if you select countries, you have the option just to select a few and print that out. So there's a lot to explore in the report. Let me move to the contextual data. The next part essentially describes what else is there. Again, this achievement is very important and interesting in itself, yes, but the context of learning can give us more insight into, okay, where does learning take place? Which students show, on average, higher levels of growth? Which students show maybe not as high levels of growth? So we can talk about relationship between those variables and student growth as well as achievement. These tables that I'm showing here, again, for some examples, I will just show the infographics. For another example, I will show the tables that are more complex, but that also take more time to digest, of course. Again, I will invite you to look for yourself in the report, also to dig down into other variables and to look at them in terms of what they can tell you about student growth. So again, I can only show two examples. I will focus on absenteeism and students' reports of bullying. And then we'll show again across countries how they might differ between different levels of the context variable. What we see here is a relatively complex graph, of course. We asked students whether they are absent never or almost never, once every 2 months, once every month, once every 2 weeks, or once a week. So a student will tell us how often they estimate they are absent. What we see here is a pretty even picture in terms of, unfortunately I cannot show this with a pointer because we have online people here. Look at the 3 leftmost columns. There the overall picture is very similar, so there is growth in all the countries as expected, and the differences don't seem to be too dramatic across these 3 columns. If you look at the right-hand side for the last 2 columns where students are very often absent or report they are very often absent, you see smaller bars, shorter bars in almost all countries. So students who are absent more don't learn as much. It's maybe not surprising, but now we have hard evidence, and we have hard evidence in 9 countries. And that is something where we might be able to do something about. We have to see how that pans out, but it's certainly one of the things. It's not only that students have lower achievement when they report, on average, when they report they are more absent, they also grow less. So overall, it will just accumulate over time, more and more. We see a similar picture again in science. Most obvious, it's been seen in the most right column, where students report they are absent about once a week. But in many countries, we also see smaller bars again in the second column, where they say they're missing school once every 2 weeks, roughly. Again, big differences in terms of not only achievement, but also in terms of growth. So again, hard data to show that absenteeism is certainly something to keep an eye on and to try to reduce as much as possible. We have a similar picture in grade 8 and 9. The change is smaller for those who are absent often, and maybe even more clear in science here, where the once per week really have a very low growth, whereas it's already getting better when they are once every 2 weeks absent. Of course, also not ideal. And you see that it's increasingly positive for those students who are absent very little. So let me move to the next. We have something about student bullying. We ask students how often they experience bullying, and we categorize into 3 large groups. Students who report they are bullied about weekly, about monthly, or never or almost never. And I'm apologizing, the numbers are a little small, but if you look at the report, you can see that, again, the average growth tends to be smaller for those who say they are bullied a lot. They're bullied about weekly, which is pretty tough. And it gets better when students report bullying less, so they show a higher level of average growth. And then for students who report they've been bullied never or almost never, the level of growth tends to be largest. Again, very consistent across all the countries. You will see a similar picture in science again. So bullying is certainly also something to keep your eye on. It's not only bad for average achievement, it's also not beneficial for growth. So bullying is certainly, I mean, even if we didn't know that, bullying is not a nice thing, obviously, but again, this is the hard data side where we can say bullying is one of those things that are detrimental at many levels, including the levels of growth we see. That doesn't change in grade 8 and grade 9. So we still have this picture, and we sometimes see even pretty extreme rates of negative growth. We very seldomly see negative growth in the data. In very few categories we see something like this. But that actually means that there's something there, and there's something to pay attention to. And yeah, not to take it too easy. Look at the science results. So in 2 of the countries we see negative, slightly negative or very negative growth. So it's certainly something to pay attention to. Okay, let me also look at the next little video here. So we have for each context variable, we have 2 tables. One shows the growth, one shows the difference or the values for 23 and 24, so that you have both pictures. You more or less can see, okay, relative to the context of student learning, how much average growth do we see in the different groups? And then you have another, may I call it the cross-sectional cut, where we have for 23 and 24 just the achievement relative to the context variable. So this is, again, already allowing you to dig relatively deep into the data. And then you have a lot more context variables. And the database will also be released publicly very early next year. So that will give everybody the opportunity to dig even more deep into the data. And I expect many, many downloads, honestly. We also have all the description. We have all the texts integrated into this interactive display. So there's a tab about the item or about the scale. And we have a tab that essentially then explains what's in the different graphs. In my view, the research is really only beginning, and the release of the international results is a big milestone, but this is a very, very rich data set. So this can be used for many, many purposes, and that will involve certainly the participating education system, certainly us at Boston College, that we want to look more into the data, certainly at IEA offices in Hamburg and Amsterdam. I can imagine many researchers who receive IEA research grants to pick this up and work on that. As I mentioned, the database will be released on February 12th, in 2026, not too far from now. And yeah, I'm very excited. I'm very happy we pulled it off, and I'm very excited about the data. There's so much more that could be done. I can't speak today about the more advanced analysis that we are planning, but we already have first insights there, but we are certainly very, very excited to see more and more people using the data. And yeah, I hope to see you at some of the next conferences and presenting the data. Thank you very much. And here's the QR code for the international report. And I hand it over to Dirk.
All right, thank you, Matthias, and also a warm welcome from me. I'm Dirk Haschet, Executive Director of IA, and really, really happy to be here. As Matthias said, it's a day of celebration. It's the first time for TIMSS that we have a longitudinal study that's attached to that. And this is very important because what TIMSS gives us, TIMSS is done every 4 years, and I would say it gives us some snapshots every 4 years of education systems. But with TIMSS longitudinal, we are moving from these snapshots, which are very, very informative, more to a kind of movie, to something that moves. So I think this is something that gives us even more insights to learn from what students can do, and we have now evidence and data that we can use. So let me give you an example. For example, from TIMSS 2023, we know that across questions related to liking math and science, a greater share of students reported that they do not like learning the subject in grade 8 than they've done in grade 4. Which is concerning, because we want the students to like learning these subjects, right? But now, with this TIMSS longitudinal, we see that in all 9 participating educational systems, the percentage of students who reported that they very much like learning mathematics and science dropped between grade 4 and 5 even. And in 7 of the participation in educational systems, grade 5 students reporting that they do not like learning mathematics had lower average growth and achievement compared to those who report liking the subject. So it's not only about liking the subject, but liking the subject, as we know, is connected to learning. Students who like it learn more. Students who learn more probably like it more. So it's very important that we look at that. Although an interesting finding is that in Korea and Sweden we saw that the increase in the percentage of students who reported that they very much like learning mathematics increased between grade 8 and 9. We don't know why yet, but these are important findings, and that I hope will inspire further research and hopefully will inspire also policies addressing these aspects. But the key is, of course, teachers, school practitioners. And although we like our statistics very much and think they're very informative, there's probably nothing that helps teachers in their day-to-day practices. So what we have done, actually, we started to publish these teacher snippets, which are condensed and they are targeted to teachers, to practitioners, to principals. And a year ago, when we published the TIMSS 2023 data, we had the release of our teacher snippet on liking mathematics counts. It was based on TIMSS 2023. And today, we are publishing a follow-up on that. We are publishing Who Likes Learning Math? And this is based on the additional insights from the TIMSS longitudinal. These snippets are available in English, but they are also translated. And I'm very happy to say that also we have now the first translated version that was done by our colleagues here. So you can also see that in the local languages, because we know that teachers and principals usually don't like to read everything in English, except in English-speaking countries, but they like to read it in their own language. So we have these snippets available, and we hope that will also inspire good practices in schools. What is important, and that's something that we also learned today, is that context is key. Learning gains, and that's what Matthias presented, they vary significantly between countries, within countries, between grades. And while most students show significant learning gains, some may experience more modest or even very little change. And as much as we would love to say otherwise, and as much as TIMSS longitudinal can give us some vital leads to follow, this means there's no easy answer. There's no one-fits-all for all students, for all systems. But we need to dive deeper into the data to find what works where. And this is what international assessments are about. It's not about rankings and which country gains most, but it's about learning how to improve education worldwide. So with learning gains varying so much between countries and also between groups of students within countries, the average growth for an education system does not tell the whole story. These varied growth trajectories highlight the importance to examine contextual factors. Which means that we need to look at that, and the data we have available now is just now the start. Matthias already showed some very interesting and important results, but the data is now available to researchers in all the countries that participated, but also the other countries. And I think it has a lot of potential to learn more about how to improve education. So, some insights. Across all countries and grades, students who reported frequent bullying, as Matthias showed, show less growth and lower average scores in math and science. And some earlier analysis also suggests that students who reported a reduction in the frequency of bullying from one year to the next tended to be among those with the highest rate of growth in achievement. And that's important. That's important to know on a policy level, but also for the practitioners. So there's something tangible that can be done to help and to improve students' learning. Also, students who reported a higher sense of well-being tended to demonstrate a higher growth in achievement across one school year than their peers who reported a lower sense of well-being. And even leaving aside the vital importance of mental health and how much we all wish for our children to be happy going to school, the TIMSS longitudinal suggests that higher sense of well-being correlates also with children simply developing more academically from one year to one year. So well-being is not only a goal in itself, but the relation to achievement shows that it's even more important to look at the students' well-being. And also, we see that there's a strong correlation between never or rarely being absent at school and achievement in math and science. And we see now that students who are often absent from school also show less growth. And again, this is something that we hopefully can impact. So it's research that hopefully informs policies and practice. Make sure your students are attending school. I mean, it seems to be quite simple, but it's a fact that the students who are not in school, they don't learn as much. That's what we see. And that's one final thing that I think also this data can bring to us. Often policymakers, journalists ask, okay, if there's a difference of scale scores, so what does it mean? What does 20, 30 scale points mean if there's a difference between boys and girls? How does it relate to how much students learn in 1 year? Well, what we see now is that our countries that participated in the study, they can answer this question and relate score points to learning gains in a school year. For example, in Sweden, we saw an average change in learning achievement for mathematics from grade 4 to 5 was a 30 score point difference. Which means if you're in Sweden and in grade 4, the difference between boys and girls would be whatever, X points, you can relate it to something tangible. What's the learning gain in one school year? And therefore, I think also this data is very, very informative. Gaps in achievement across a whole range of variables can be described now in very tangible terms. But again, as we saw, there's no easy answer internationally. So we cannot say 30 score points in general mean this or that, because it differs between countries, between grades, and that's important. So if you really want to know what's the meaning of 20 score points in your country in grade 4 or 5, well, participate in a study like that and you get the answer. So with that, I'd like to thank all of you for your attention. I'd like to thank also all the countries that participated in the study. I'd like to thank also all the principals, teachers, students who complete the questionnaire. I'd like to thank the European Commission for their support. And of course, a special thanks to our host here in Montenegro, one of the countries that participates in many studies, and we are very happy to have Montenegro participating continuously in our study in order to get information to improve their system further on. So with that, a big thanks to everyone, and as I said, the work starts here, and we are getting now, after some question and answers, also a panel on what some countries learned from this. And as I said, the learning and what countries learned from this study might also differ very much between the countries. So I'm really looking forward to get also the insights from all of these countries. So with that, a big thanks to all of you. Thank you.
Thank you, Dirk. We are very much on time, chronologically. With all these insights, you might have felt that time was differently as inner time. But we have time for questions and answers. Besides being the IEA chair, my name is Christian Christoph Kielsen, and I'm the director of the National Center for School Research in Denmark. Matthias said everyone should have been here, which I fully agree. But just to let you know that online we have participants attending from South Africa, Singapore, Iran, and Italy. So there might be some issues with the length of traveling. So we are glad that we can do it in both modes. Feel free, within the room, there will be a microphone. Feel free to post a question in Montenegrin. We have translation, so feel free to do that. I will now open the floor for any questions to the two presentations. So just raise your hand and you will have the microphone. Don't be shy. We also had some questions ahead of the presentation, and it's possible to raise questions online as well. Just one question, so I think that's questions to start out with is we all also see this tendency for having league tables, rankings of countries, and one of the questions is how we can use these longitudinal studies to gain insights that goes beyond just arranging rankings. I would really love to hear your perspectives on that, both of you, Dirk and Matthias.
Okay, give me a start on that. Yes, we know that there's always a big emphasis on the league table. Who is doing best and who is first, who is second, whatever. So we do publish these tables, although we think it's definitely not the most informative part of it. Because the aim is, of course, to gain insights to improve education. So I think it's very important also, and I agree to the person who asked the question, to de-emphasize these ranking tables, but go much deeper in. And currently, there is much more information, and I think I've shown some examples in the presentation where the results from TIMSS, but also in this case from TIMSS Longitudinal, can help to improve education, which is and should always be the major goal of these international studies.
Yeah, I can only agree. So we produce this table in every report. However, there are many other tables, there are many other statistics. This is not the most important statistic. This establishes an international scale where you can compare your system to other systems at a very, very high level. But where you learn more is when you dig deeper, when you look at the benchmarks, how students are distributed across different levels of proficiency. And with this longitudinal study, because that's why we are here today, just as a counterexample, those sortings that you might see in the league table might no longer hold up if you look at the student growth. That might actually reverse some orderings. So different things happen when you look at growth and when you look at other types of variables. So the mean, that is the main point of the league table to present the mean, doesn't say everything, to say it nicely. If I wanted to be more extreme, I would actually say only looking at the mean achievement and only looking at the ranking tells you very little about achievement. So there are many more deeper sources of information in the report. And one of the new levels of information is that, yeah, growth is actually not perfectly related to your order on the league table. Look at what we saw in terms of reversal in the grade 8-9 versus grade 4-5, for example.
Thank you very much. If there is any questions in the room, just raise your hand still. We have until then a question from the online attendees, and I will just read it up. The attendee writes, I saw on the IEA website that the longitudinal study materials indicate that the second test will select some more difficult questions. In that case, are the two sets of scores comparable? I think that's a very important thing to be very clear of. Matthias?
Yes, a very good question. But the beauty of how we analyze the data is that we can actually account for the differences in question difficulty. We have a lot of information about how those questions are ordered, and we randomize all the different booklets across the students in both time points. So we have all the information about all the questions at both time points. And we know which questions are harder, which questions are easier. So there are no biases introduced because of the way how we account for the difficulty of the questions. So I could enter into a lecture, which I won't, but there's hundreds, if not thousands, of publications about this, how this is done, and why this has been done in international and national assessments at least for 40 years now.
Thank you very much. It's an important question, you know, that you are able to actually measure on the same scale, even though you do not get the same booklets or the same difficulties. I'm glad for this question because it reminds me of one of the founders of this idea, the Danish mathematician Rasch, who soiled the ground for this. We have another question from the online attendees, which I presume because it's so rich in results, we could not cover everything in the presentation. But what the question is, what insights have emerged from teachers' educational practices? Could you say some words about, you know, some of the results related to teacher practices and the longitudinal study? Yeah,
so there's more in the context data among these and in the curriculum questionnaire and in the teacher questionnaire. And we have tables, for example, around the instructional clarity, which talks about how students essentially understand how well the teacher explains things, how the students rate more or less, do I understand what the teacher tells us? So that can be related to growth as well as achievement. And we saw that there, again, across countries, there are varying relationships in these variables, for example. And yeah, the data is much deeper than that. So we have both at the curricular level. Right now we're working internally on a study where we're looking into what is described in the curricula, what the teachers say they taught, and how that might relate to achievement. So all these are, again, very detailed questions that you can ask based on this database, especially because you also have the change in that. You also have the change in terms of what teachers said they were able to cover between those years.
Dirk, have it as well?
Yeah, I think it's a very good question. I think especially here we see the value of TIMSS longitudinal, whereas normally in TIMSS we have also information from the teacher. It's just the current teacher. But of course there's learning across 4 or 8 years with different teachers. So sometimes it's not easy to really relate teacher attributes to the achievement level. But here, what we have the teacher who taught these students in the year where we are measuring the learning growth. So this shows the high potential also of the TIMSS longitudinal data, and why it's even for especially questions like this, maybe even more suitable than the normal TIMSS data. So I'm really looking forward to further analysis and results that are coming out of that.
Before breaking out, one last question that relates perhaps more to the policy implications, because this attendee asks, you presented on absenteeism and bullying, and says, okay, is there more to it than the teachers reducing absence and bullying? Who should else be engaged? And are there any insights on ways to reducing this absenteeism and bullying, perhaps from a policy perspective? Dirk?
Yeah, thank you very much also for that question. I think, and that's what we also see, not only the results are different from country to country, but also how we can tackle specific problems or issues probably differ significantly between the countries, because you have different cultures, you have different involvement of the ministries in daily practice of the parents. But especially this one, I think, is important that we tackle this from all directions. So we can look at the policy level, and I think policies can impact student absenteeism. And also parents, of course, play a key and a substantial role. So if we are able to convince the parents of the importance that their kids are attending school, I think that's already a big step. Not to speak, especially for the later grades, also to directly talk to the students and say, well, you might think you learn as much if you skip class and you do just learn at home. Actually, the data shows a different story. Please attend school. This is so important for learning. And of course, on school level, it's school policies, it's teachers. Teachers should monitor absenteeism. And if students are absent for a longer time or more frequent, it's something that they should be worried about. And they should take care and talk to the students. So I think there's probably not a one suits all solution, but it's definitely something that we need to tackle from very different perspectives. And I hope everyone now sees the importance, and we can join forces to reduce absenteeism worldwide.
Just a shameless advertisement for one of the insights reports that we just published. We looked at profiles of schools in terms of well-being related variables, including variables we talked about. And this new database, the longitudinal database, would be a wonderful playground for a researcher to replicate the study based on the longitudinal data over time, to find profiles of schools, how they might change over time in terms of these variables. So there's a lot to do there, and I think I can only invite again, download the data on February 12th. And yeah, we will also do our share, but there's so much opportunity here. So again, we're very happy about this database, and thank you all.
Yeah, I mean, it's obvious it's hard to learn anything from school if you're not there, but you know how these things works, and I think that in particular this study, having the classroom as the unit makes it possible to see how the classroom as such influences also these things, not only the teachers having the task of reducing bullying or absence. We will now break out for until 11:45. And then we will have the panel, and I'm really looking forward for the panel, because there we will have some country perspectives, what's learned, and it will be moderated by Milos, the director of the examination center here at Montenegro. So stay in or grab a coffee and then return 11:45. Thank you so much. Thank you, everyone.
Okay, we can start now. First of all, I will introduce all of our panelists today. Here is Dr. Betty Lameva, Head of Sector of Exams, IT and Research at National Examination Center, Republic of North Macedonia. Betty Lameva has 25 years of professional experience in large-scale assessment. She is Head of Sector for Exams, IT and Research at National Examination Center, Skopje, Republic of North Macedonia, since 1999. She began her professional career in this field as a data manager in TIMSS, PEARLS and PISA. Dr. Lameva has a doctoral degree in the area of external evaluation in education and author or co-author of many research reports as well as many informative and technical methodological articles on aspects related to large-scale standardized measurements. She has made a significant contribution to data processing and has actively participated in several international conferences in the fields of working interests. Also with us today is Dr. Daniele Viodini, Policy Coordinator, Representative of European Commission. Dr. Viodini has been with the European Commission for 12 years, where he serves on the DG Education and Cultural Evidence-Based Policy and Impact Evaluation Unit. His work deals with the analysis of trends, policies, and issues in the implementation of state aid modernization, in particular the area of evaluation. Before joining the European Commission, he was senior researcher at Italian National Institute for Educational Evaluation, where he was responsible for the Educational Evaluation Unit. Also, Dr. Viodini's work deals with the impact evaluation and policy analysis, particularly in the field of education. His work is published in various Italian and international journals. With us today is also Dr. Mona Guat. She is senior officer in Swedish National Agency of Education. Dr. Mona Guat is a senior education officer for education, where she serves as a statistician, leveraging her PhD in cognitive psychology. Mona specializes in analyzing educational data to inform policy and practice, providing a quantitative lens through which educational challenges and opportunities can be truthfully assessed. Her experience in statistical methods and cognitive psychology allows her to contribute a unique perspective to the interpretation of international assessments and longitudinal studies like TIMSS. In addition to her analytical work, Mona is actively involved in international collaborations, bringing a global perspective to Swedish education policy. Here with us is also Ms. Milica Vušurović. She's Master in Biology Technique and Methodology, Biology Education Advisor from Bureau of Education of Montenegro. Milica Vušurović graduated from the Faculty of Natural Sciences and Mathematics in Podgorica, where she started a master's degree in biology teaching methodology. With more than 30 years of experience in education, she began her career as a biology teacher at Njegoš Elementary School in Cetinje and worked as a biology professor at the Cetinje Gymnasium. Since 2012, she served as a biology education advisor at the Bureau of Education of Montenegro. And the host here today is Marina Radović. She is head of Department of International Cooperation, Research and Assessment of Examination Center of Montenegro. She worked as an advisor for international studies at the National Research Coordinator for TIMSS and PEARLS for Examination Center of Montenegro. Previously, she was a teacher at a secondary vocational school and held the position of deputy principal. She participated in national and international projects and was a member of several working groups, including the one for drafting for the Education Reform Strategy 2025 to 2035. She is the author and co-author of several teacher professional development programs, as well as chapters in the publications Dynamic Perspective on TIMSS and Dynamic Perspectives on Pearls, both part of IEA Research and Education book series. So I will start with first question. Based on your country's results, what do you consider to be the most important insights from the TIMSS longitudinal data regarding changes in educational quality over time? What was most surprising? What was most interesting?
Good afternoon. It's a pleasure to be here today and discuss about this inspiring topic. TIMSS longitudinal study tracks the same cohort of students over time, collects comparable data on students' progress, and shows how student achievement changes in a different learning context throughout the year. For Montenegro, there are a few important insights from the TIMSS longitudinal study. The first one is the continuous progress. But I would start and I would mention the first cycles. Montenegro has participated in TIMSS 2019 and TIMSS 2023 for grade 4 and for grade 5 in TIMSS longitudinal. Mathematics and science scores have increased over time, but not at the same pace. Over the TIMSS 2019 to TIMSS 2023, mathematics achievement score has increased by 24 points, and science score has improved by 8 points. After one additional year of schooling, the positive trend continued in TIMSS longitudinal, and fifth grade students gained 17 points in mathematics and 18 points in science, compared to their achievement in TIMSS 2023 assessment and their achievements at grade 4. Also, we noticed that there are the great, let's say, increase across all content and cognitive domains in both mathematics and science. I would mention also the benchmark progress. More students reach the higher benchmark progress in grade 5 than in grade 4. In Montenegro, the largest increasement is at the high and the intermediate benchmarks. In mathematics, it's 9 and 8% respectively, and in science, it's 8 and 10% respectively. However, smaller improvements were seen also at the advanced and the low benchmarks. Smaller, I said, it means in mathematics 2 and 3% respectively, and in science 2 and 4% respectively. So with consistent improvements and positive trends from cycle to cycle, Montenegro students are approaching the international average of 500 points. Now in TIMSS longitudinal, I just like to say that we reached in mathematics 494. We are satisfied because of the positive trends, but I hope that in the next cycle it will be much better. Also in science, students achieved 479 points. The second important insight is the persistent challenges. In general, in countries with a lower overall achievement, in mathematics and science, many students have not reached the low benchmark. Considering that in our country, many students have not reached the low benchmark, it is the real challenge for all students to reach at least the low benchmark. At the moment, in TIMSS longitudinal, we have 87% in mathematics, 87% in mathematics of students who reached the low benchmark, and 84 for the science. On the other hand, we have also just to mention, we have also the countries with a higher overall achievement, where students from these countries are almost all achieved or reached the low benchmark. The last but not least important insight from the TIMSS longitudinal data is a low level of the motivation of our students. And although our students are achieving better results, we noticed that their motivation, their confidence, their enjoyment in learning mathematics and science are lower than in the previous cycles. Since motivation greatly influences students' achievement, it is important to boost their interests and to improve for the next cycles, and also to improve their engagement through the inquiry-based learning or digital learning. This is also a big challenge for us in the next cycles.
Thank you, Marina. Let's now skip to North Macedonia. Dr. Lemeva.
Good afternoon. It's a pleasure to be part of this panel. I will tell just a short introduction about my country, how participant in international assessment. We start in TIMSS in 1999, with TIMSS 1999, with grade 8. Until that year, today, we participate in 2 cycles for 8th grade and 2 cycles in 4th grade, and now in TIMSS 2027. TIMSS 2023 was the first cycle in which the assessment was administered electronically in my country. The test we conduct in 2 languages, Macedonian and Albanian. Although the achievement of our 4th grade students remained below the international average in the increasing cycle to cycle, what is very important for us because we go in growing line. In TIMSS 2023, students for my country were among the youngest participation, with the average age of 9.8, and a lot of people, especially for the educational institution, thinking that our results is like that because our students is so young. And about that, participation in longitudinal study was very important for us. Now the average of students, the age of students, it's 10.9, but the results it's also below the international average. But we go in growing line, what is very, very good. We're growing for 15 points in math and only 10 points in science. For me, the question is, for us, very important, is the relationship to the money, what we invest in our educational system in according the results of TIMSS. Because the investing in educational system from country to country, it's so different. However, the differences also between Macedonian and Albanian students, it's biggest, it's significant. We have a significant differences between Macedonian and Albanian students. If we compare TIMSS 2023 and longitudinal study, the differences now it's bigger. But the good way it's in math, we don't have a differences between boys and girls in 2023, also in longitudinal study, but in science the differences are double now. This is very good way where to move our country in the next period. And I will speak later for the background variable, what is also give us a lot of information, where to work, where to improve in our educational system to be quality better.
Thank you very much, Betty. Can we now go to Sweden to hear Dr. Mona about insights from this country?
Okay, yes. You hear me, yes? Okay, so Sweden has been participating in TIMSS since 1995, if I'm not wrong. So we participated for a long time. So as I interpreted the question, I'm going to focus on one thing that surprised us, and that was the large distribution of achievements points in grade 9 compared with grade 5. And so the fact that the lowest achievers in grade 9 did not make any progress surprised us and made us very sad, of course. And so we looked at the benchmarks, and we could see that students not reaching the low benchmark were approximately 9% in grade 8, and they were 9% in grade 9 as well. Whereas in grade 5, we could see that the proportion was smaller in grade 5. Oh, sorry. Well, the percentage points difference was approximately -2. So they progressed between grade 4 and 5, but not between grade 8 and 9. We could also see that the students who reached the advanced benchmark in grade 9 made out a greater proportion. So we think that TIMSS and TIMSS Longitudinal reveal a dual development in Sweden. So on the one hand, Sweden has reversed a negative trend that bottomed out in 2011. And Swedish results have improved the past decade. And in TIMSS 2019, for instance, grade 8 was above average in both science and math. So this represents a strong rebound in TIMSS from 2011. And these improvements, I should mention, have been achieved despite the fact that the proportion of students with an immigrant background in 2011 was 20% and increased to 30% in 2019. And on the other hand, as I said, we see dual development here. We see a rising inequity. So while the average scores improved in recent TIMSS cycles, the spread of student achievement has also increased. And this confirms a persistent inequity. So this tension between rising averages and continued inequity is central to an ongoing policy debate in Sweden. And the trend suggests that efforts need not only be focused on raising the overall performance, but also to let all students get the opportunity to succeed. And I won't go into details, but I would just like to mention that we have some reforms that are being discussed and already launched, and it includes a new curriculum and strengthening teachers in their professional role, and most important, or not least but not very important, is early support for students. And I think I'll come back to that at another question, what we think about this support for vulnerable students. Thank you.
Thank you, Mona. And now let's hear what is perspective for these results based on European Commission. Dr. Vidoni.
Thank you very much. And first of all, thanks to the IEA and the organizer and to Montenegro for the invitation. The first thing I must say is, of course, what is the role of the European Commission in education? I mean, we don't have a direct role, but what we can do is to serve for coordination and support purposes to the countries. Therefore, this is the perspective from which I'm addressing these questions and also the following ones. The element that for us is most important in the TIMSS longitudinal studies is longitudinal and international. This study provides us with something that is more and more felt as necessary, but yet missing. Meaning, we do not, at the moment, have comparable data on individual trajectories. So this is one first attempt to fill that gap. And it's doing it in very remarkable ways, as all the colleagues have already been indicating, because it allows countries to have different insights on, well, what is happening, what needs to happen to complete, let's say, the evolution, for example, where more support is needed, or where there are system characteristics that would need to be addressed. This is the information that is most important for the European Commission. I mean, we have a variety of initiatives, for example, the Basic Skill Action Plan that is aimed towards raising basic skills in all the student population, and is stemmed from the evidence that we collected from TIMSS as well from all the other international surveys of a kind of a standpoint, and then a decrease in student knowledge, student competencies in the last years. So this situation of weakening of basic skills brought us to the need of trying to see whether this trend can be reverted. And therefore, we are in the loop of creating tools for supporting countries. But of course, having general information is not always sufficient. We need to have more granular news from the countries on what could be done. And this TIMSS longitudinal is one of the tools that can help as a thermometer, just to raise, to measure the temperature in the countries and provide us with additional information so that we can define together the tools that can help you best. And I think that this is the information from our side.
Thank you very much, Dr. Bodini, and I have to take opportunity to thank you on behalf of Montenegro for support for all those international studies we are involved. Now we are going to second question. TIMSS perspective on math and science national curriculum. What does the TIMSS perspective reveal about the strengths and weaknesses of the national math and science curriculum? I will start with our Montenegro. Here with us is, as I mentioned, Milica Vušurović from Bureau for Education of Montenegro. Milica.
Thank you, Miloše. Hello, everybody. When we compare Montenegro's national curriculum for math and science in the first 4 grades with the TIMSS study, we can see differences in how learning and assessment are organized. TIMSS is based on specific areas, topics, and goals, while our curriculum is built around learning outcomes. These outcomes follow Bloom's taxonomy and include different areas of student development, such as cognitive skills, emotional development, and psychomotor abilities. The curriculum clearly defines learning outcomes for knowledge, application, and reasoning at 3 levels: basic, intermediate, and advanced. One of the positive aspects of our curriculum are learning activities. Teachers receive learning activities that help them plan their lesson more easily. This helps the student understand what they learn and apply their knowledge in different situations. In my opinion, one strength of our curriculum are subjects nature and society and nature. Nature and society, our students learn from first to third grade, then nature in 4th and 5th grade. This subject include different science topics and give students a strong foundation for later learning in biology, chemistry, physics, and geography. But our curriculum has weaknesses, especially in content. When we if we are talking about mathematics, we can see the significant difference in mathematics when compared to TIMSS. In our curriculum, students learn natural numbers only up to 1,000, while TIMSS expects students to work with 6-digit numbers. After that, our students are only starting to learn what fractions are, while TIMSS checks if students can add, subtract, and compare fractions. If we are talking about areas decimals number, we have a difference in there too. TIMSS also checks addition and subtraction of decimal numbers up to 2 decimals places and the connection between decimal numbers and fraction, which in our curriculum is taught in the 6th grade. Then, if in area measurement and geometry, concept of the milliliter does not appear until the 4th grade, and there are also differences in learning about the perimeter of solid figures, and then find the volume of solid files with cube and similar content. When we talk about domain data, the TIMSS domain data is also more demanding than our curriculum. Our students learn to read tables and pie charts, while TIMSS also includes line graphs and pictograms, which require more advanced skills. And when we talk about science, we have content gaps too. Compared to many TIMSS countries, our curriculum does not include all topics taught internationally. For example, in life science, missing learning outcomes about heredity and reproduction strategies living creature. Then in earth science, our curriculum gives less attention to earth history and fossils. In same areas, we missing learning outcomes for earth resource, objects in solar system and their movement. When we if we are talking about physical science, we don't include several learning outcomes. There are missing learning outcomes in topics physical properties used to classify matter, then magnetic attraction and repulsion, then chemical and physical change seen in everyday life. There are also missing learning outcomes in the areas of energy and energy transfer, as well as force and motion. And in the end, we can conclude our curriculum has a strong structure and clear learning outcomes, but we need to expand the content and raise expectation to better match international standards. Montenegro will reform its education system in the coming period. Using TIMSS as guides can help us improve the curriculum while keeping our focus on the full development of each student.
Thank you, Milica. As we heard, there is a lot of space for improvement in our national curriculum, and based on data we provided with these studies, I think it will be treasure for Bureau of Education of Montenegro for improvement. Betty, can we hear this comparison for North Macedonia?
In primary education in Macedonia, we have just a state school. We don't have a private according to the law. And that means we have just one general curricula what they use in all school. If we see the number of classes per week for math they have in 4th grade, also in 5th grade, the students have everyday math class, but science is just 2 classes per week. That means very few. Until 4th grade, math and science teach a class teacher, but in 5th grade, math also teach the class teacher, but science, we have a separate teacher, a subject teacher, but the background of that teacher is not the subject that is specialist for biology or chemistry, of geography or physics. And if we compare the results of our students for the longitudinal study with how it's growing according previous cycle, and now in science we just have 10 points, but in math maybe 15 points. Maybe it's better to be a class teacher or a subject teacher, but this needs more deeper analysis what this means. But also in 4th grade, if we compare assessment framework in TIMSS to our curricula, in 4th grade have a lot of differences. Maybe in science, 30% of topic what include in the assessment framework in TIMSS is not included in our curricula. Some of them we are touched, but not deeper. And our students, it's not possible to answer that item. They are just not understand. But in 5th grade, for math, everything they learn. For science, only fossil they doesn't learn. And for us, it was very important to participate in longitudinal study to see now results, because almost all in science are included in our curricula, and in math, everything. That's it.
Thank you, Betty. Dr. Mona, can we hear more about Swedish national curriculum?
Yes, so I will focus a bit on the reforms that have been made in Sweden and tie them a bit to the results. And so there has been several reforms in Sweden since 2011, or specifically we made some major changes 2011. And as I mentioned earlier, a notable strength is that the Swedish students improved since 2011 in both subjects, and that's not the case in other countries, or not all at least. And so this period where we improved coincides with a series of significant educational reforms in Sweden. And these include new curriculum, new syllabi, changes in grading and assessment systems, and all these took place between 2010 and 2011. So while TIMSS cannot attribute causality, it is striking that these reforms, the reform period coincides with the turning point of the results, and this suggests that the curriculum and the policy changes may have had a positive impact on student achievement. And now it's going to be on the other hand again, as I talked about the dual development previously. TIMSS results and related research highlight weaknesses, and the major concern is that the curriculum's practical implementation, especially regarding the support for lower achieving students. So from international comparisons, we know that Swedish schools tend to provide support interventions later than in many other countries. And this delay means that students who struggle with math or science or both often are identified at a later stage. And this may potentially exacerbate the existing achievement gaps. So as in many other EU countries, new curriculum reforms are taking place right now in Sweden, and the Swedish National Agency for Education are working on this, and they will take effect in 2028. I would just mention a few of these changes. We heard Daniela speak about basic knowledge, and we are trying to put more emphasis on that and skills. And we talk about writing, reading, and arithmetic. And also a reinforced teacher role. And we want to provide commentary materials to support teachers in practice, so to say. And finally, I would like to mention a few proposals we have that have not yet been implemented. We want to improve support within schools, targeted, and enhance safety in the classroom. And we also are looking into how we can ensure equitable grading practices, so that you students, regardless of what school you attend, you get the same degree depending on your achievement. Thank you.
Thank you, Mona. As you mentioned, without supporting teachers, there is no implementation of any study or anything in educational system. Dr. Vidoni, can we hear a comment on this question?
Thank you very much. Well, again, we do not necessarily intervene, of course, in the dimension of in the curricular dimension, because that is a sole responsibility of the individual countries. However, we do have a role concerning the support to teachers. For example, we have a variety of initiatives at international level that are the so-called teachers' academies, in which basically the idea is to promote a common understanding and development also of curricular practices based on the existence of, let's say, consortia of providers that offer kind of international master, sort of international master degrees, or in any case, international courses for teachers to develop their competencies, also curricular competencies. And there is a number also of different additional initiatives, like, for example, the Pathways to School Success, which is another, this was adopted, this is a resolution adopted recommendation adopted in 2022 that tries to suggest, to support, let's say, member states into identifying areas for development, also for support to teachers. And last but not least, there is the role that we provide in the so-called European semester. The European semester is kind of a Commission-wide initiative that requires member states to identify every year the priorities in which they are interested into investing. And some of these priorities, of course, have to do also with education, and some of this, and some countries may decide that their attention will be related to support to teachers. And therefore, what we do is to provide, let's say, a platform for collaboration and identification of these priorities.
Thank you very much. Student motivation is frequently discussed as an important factor influencing achievement in large-scale assessments. Did the TIMSS longitudinal study reveal any new or particularly interesting insights for you regarding the role of motivation in student learning and performance? Marina, shall we start from Montenegro?
Okay, as we know, high motivation is one of the most important factors for achieving better results. And as I mentioned before, according to the results of TIMSS longitudinal, we noticed that enjoyment in learning and confidence in learning math and science, and as well as the attitude of students according to these subjects have decreased. The weakening of students' motivation is concerning. And because from grade to grade, there are fewer students who reported that they like very much learning math or science. In grade 4 in Montenegro, we had more than half of the students, exactly 53% of students, who said that they liked very much learning math and science, and their achievements were higher. But in grade 5, this percentage decreased to 36. So the average growth for students who reported that they have very much liked learning math in grade 4 versus grade 5 is 22 points. Then the percentage of students who do not like learning math and science, on the other hand, has increased, particularly in mathematics. So we have a category of students who said that, who reported that in Montenegro, 17% who reported that they do not like learning math, while in 5th grade, this percentage increased to 33% of students. It's obvious that their achievement is not so good, let's say is worse than the students from the first group that I mentioned. Also in grade 5, 15% of students reported that they do not like learning science. But in science, in grade 5, that percentage increased only in 18, not too much comparing to the math. Besides this, we have also the decreasement of confidence. So confidence in grade 4, students reported that 36% of students reported that being very confident in learning math, and their achievements were 500, even above the international average, 515. But that percentage decreased to 26 in grade 5. The difference between students who reported being very confident and those who reported being not confident in learning math is 81 points. It's too much. We are trying now, but according to this data, we will try to reduce that. Besides these two that I mentioned, I would also mention the other factors, such as school and classroom factors that influence a lot in motivation, well-being, students' well-being, and students' school belonging. So in grade 4, I will mention that for Montenegro, 71% of students reported that they had a strong sense of school belonging. It also means that they had a higher achievement. But in grade 5, that percentage decreased to 58. I would finish with that is very important to boost students' interest and to improve maybe teacher-student support. So it is the key of lasting progress. Thank you.
Thank you, Marina. And other countries would like to have the insights for this topic.
I could just mention that we see the same trend in Sweden with the decreasing motivation in both grades. And we could see that we have some national options measuring the motivation to do the test, the TIMSS test, that is. And we analyzed one of the questions in the report, and the question is simply, I did my best on the TIMSS test. And results indicated a decrease in motivation in both grades, and we had expected that because we were doing the same test again. We could see that students who were less motivated, of course, performed worse, both when we looked at the change score and the mean score. But this effect was more pronounced in grade 9, where the unmotivated students' change score was less than the half of those who were motivated. So that's quite worrying. Whereas in the lower grades, so in grade 5, even though they were less motivated, there was not such a large difference between the achievement scores. I could also shortly mention the motivation to learn the subjects. And here we found there was also this difference between the lower and higher grades. So we could see that students in grade 5 were less motivated to learn both math and science than in grade 4. And also their confidence decreased. So they were less confident in both science and math in grade 5 compared to grade 4. And while in grade 9, we saw the reverse trend. So suddenly, students became more confident and more motivated to learn all subjects. And we know that in science, we have 3 subjects in grade 8 and 9. So this was, and we could also, well, what we could see then when we looked at the correlations with achievement was that in grade 5, even though they were less motivated and felt that they had less confidence, the change scores were not that different between the groups. But in grade 9, we saw somewhat that there were also the same trend, so there were not much difference between the motivations. But when controlling, of course, for other background variables, the effects were attenuated in math, and they disappeared totally in science. So there were no difference between achievement regarding how confident or motivated you were. In grade 9, however, the small differences that we saw, they were still there when we had control for background variables. Yes, thank you.
Thank you. A topic that many people are eager to see the findings from the TIMSS longitudinal is bullying at school. What have you observed in the context questionnaire data regarding this issue? Shall we now start with Betty and North Macedonia?
Okay. Bullying in our school, in a topic that is become more relevant in recent years. Bullying affects student achievement in increased proportion, both in science and also in math. And in the school, in our educational system, less bullying if they have in the school. That means the high achievement for math, also for science. The percentage of students who told that almost never have a bullying at school for TIMSS 2023 and for the longitudinal study, it's almost the same. 52% in TIMSS 2023 and now 53%. But the biggest is a percentage of students who told us that have a bullying of 1 a week. That means 23% of students told that 1 a week take a bullying at school. And it's important to see this number and to go deeper in the analysis. If we go, we will see that this percentage of students, 23%, growing the achievement of these students is just 3 points in math, but in science it's 0. But the students who doesn't take bullying at school, the growing it's more than 20 points. This gives a lot of information for our educational system. Maybe need more training at school for this percentage of students to be less, because it's so big percentage of bullying. Thank you.
Thank you, Betty. I think that percentages are similar in Montenegro, but Marina will tell us more what we have collected from this data.
In Montenegro, the majority of students in grade 4 as well as in grade 5, 65% exactly of students reported that they had never experienced bullying at school or any peer aggression. It means that they had better achievement also. And on the other hand, we have 17% of students in grade 5 that they said that they experienced bullying at school once a week. It is a 17-point difference in average growth between students who reported being bullied about monthly and those who reported being bullied about weekly. This finding shows that a safe and supportive school helps students achieve more. It's very important, and according to these findings, I would say that we don't have so many problems in our country regarding this. bullying at school or peer aggression. Thank you.
Thank you, Marina. And what about bullying in Sweden, Dr. Mona?
Well, we could see that the students who indicated that they were bullied showed a smaller progression, of course, between both grades. But in grade 9, as you may have noticed when Matthias showed the slides, we had a negative progression for students in grade 9 who indicated that they were bullied once a week. And I actually thought that my colleague had put this minus sign accidentally, but it wasn't the case. We haven't looked deeper into this. I can't really comment. Although we did see that the proportion of students who indicated that they were bullied once a week were quite low, was quite low. So we had 6% of the students in grade 5 and 7% of the students in grade 9. And that also makes me think that we need to be very careful with the interpretation since these groups are quite small. Yes, I really shouldn't be speculating about the reasons for this, but of course we take this very seriously. Thank you.
Thank you. We have heard so many times today that it is important that students are going to school. So I'm interested in hearing your insight on student absenteeism in your country. Now, let's start from Sweden.
Sorry, if I may, one comment about the bullying part. I mean, what we see from the data brought from TIMSS and TIMSS Longitudinal is in fact the existence of a very relevant issue, which we take very seriously. So there is multiple initiatives at the level of European Commission to address exactly this topic. I mean, I already mentioned the Council conclusions, the recommendation on pathways to school success, which suggests basically that member states take a common approach in order to reduce this issue. But there is a number of products that have already been created and are available. So, for example, there is guidelines on the well-being and mental health in schools. There is a forthcoming action plan against cyberbullying, because cyberbullying is an important dimension of bullying as such. And then there is a lot of possibilities to get funding through Erasmus Plus projects or in order to address these elements. So indeed, I mean, again, evidence like the evidence that we can get from TIMSS data and TIMSS longitudinal data, showcasing not only the existence of differences, but the existence of differences that become bigger. I mean, the existence of divergent trajectories related, at least related to this dimension, urges us to do something. And of course, I mean, the European Commission is there to help.
Thank you very much. This was a hint maybe to start with next question, just with you, Dr. Daniele, about absenteeism. Is there any policy or some kind of how you can provide for students and for their parents the importance of attending school? Let's hear it from European Commission and then from country to country, Sweden, North Macedonia and Montenegro.
Thank you very much again. Well, in a sense, the issue of absenteeism goes a bit hand in hand with what we were just saying. I mean, what I mentioned already, for example, the guidelines of well-being and mental health in schools, the pathways to school success, these are kind of comprehensive measures or comprehensive reference documents that have been drafted based on the needs indicated by the countries, and they are done in order to create kind of a common framework to support, from one side, the reflection on these topics, like bullying on one side, but absenteeism also on the other, and also to propose jointly elaborated approaches in order to reduce the issue.
Okay, thank you. Mona?
Thank you. Absenteeism, I cannot think that, I just have to mention this because I've been thinking this the whole panel discussion, that I'm sure it's related to bullying. So in that sense, they should be investigated at the same time, controlling for everything else. But that was a side note. We see a slight increase in the absenteeism in grade 5 compared with grade 4. For instance, 50% of the students indicated that they were almost never absent in grade 4, whereas this proportion was 47 in grade 5, so no huge increases, but nevertheless. We see a similar trend in grade 9. The proportion of students who indicated that they were never or almost never absent dropped from 38 to 34% in grade 8 and grade 9, respectively. And and of course, the usual association with more absence, lower achievement, and they were significantly worse in both grades. What else can I say? We saw this interesting, I don't know if you paid attention to the table with science broken up on different frequency of absence in Sweden, but now I forget which, and I can't get my computer working, but I tried to fish in my memory, and I think it's grade 4. And we saw that maybe not those who were absent once a week, but with higher absence, we could see that they have almost as high or higher change score in science. And so we've been speculating a bit, me and my colleagues, but we would really like to dig deeper into that. What does that signify? Because we don't see that in mathematics. Yes, I think that's all for Sweden.
Thank you very much. Betty, can we hear from you what is connectivity with assessmentism and achievement in North Macedonia?
Student absenteeism from early school age in current majority problem in North Macedonia, and its effect directly to the achievement of students. For TIMSS, we have just 23% of students tell us that one per week they have absent from the school. Now this percent is 21%, but it's so big. And 7% of students tell us that absent from school for once per 2 weeks. That means this is about almost 30% of students are absent from school 1 per 2 weeks. It's so big percentage. On the other hand, 46% of students tell us that are not absent from the school. But if we see results of our students connected to absent from school, we will see that students who go to school almost every day, they have a better results and they're growing in TIMSS 2023 with longitudinal around 20 points, but the students who doesn't go at school, who absent one per week or per 2 weeks, they're growing just 3 points. And this is a big problem in Macedonia. Now we prepare a new strategy for education, and in that strategy we include these issues like a big problem, like a bullying, and in next period we will work in these issues, the percentage to be less. We have a law, but that is not enough. But in the law stay directly what the documents should they have if they doesn't go at school, but that is not enough. Thank you.
Thank you, Betty. And Marina, can we hear about students' absenteeism in Montenegro, please?
Yes, of course. In Montenegro, we don't have any problems with the frequent students' absenteeism. Exactly about half of the students in grade 4 as well as in grade 5 reported that they had never or almost never been absent. 53% in grade 4 and 48% in grade 5. It's a huge number of students, so I think it will be okay if it stay. So average achievement doesn't differ significantly among students who reported that being absent never or almost never and once every 2 months. But on the other side, that we notice that we have the decreased percentage of students who reported that they are being absent once a week. In grade 4, it was 17% of students who reported that they were absent once a week. And it's interesting, in grade 5, it is decreased. We expected to have increased result, but increased percentage, but it's interesting to have decrease on 12%. And it's also a hope to decrease, to continue decreasing the frequent absent to school. Thank you.
Thank you. So basically we can all conclude that from the all beginning that students have to go to school and their place is at school. Because our time is leaking, we are in the last 6 minutes of our panel. Before I give you last question, please have also conclusion from this panel, because we have to make few minutes maybe for questions from public or online or here in present. So what insights have you observed regarding how socioeconomic status affects students' learning and achievement? Let's go from Sweden.
I've already touched upon the subject about vulnerable students, but I'll just make a brief note since we are almost out of time. So students in grade 5 made quite large progress in both math and science, regardless of degree of home resources. But the mean scores were, however, much lower for the less advantaged students. But when we controlled for other background variables in a regression, this relationship turned. So in fact, they were the high SES students who were displaying a larger progress. In grade 9, on the other hand, students with few home resources did not make any progress at all in neither of the subjects. And this was, we were very surprised and of course worried when we saw these results. And as I touched upon earlier, we think that we can see from hard facts that vulnerable students aren't compensated enough in our school system. And we're addressing this right now with new measures. Thank you.
Thank you. Betty, what is the impact of socioeconomic status and how it affects students' learning and achievement in North Macedonia?
my country, around 33% in a longitudinal study told us that belong to family via low socioeconomical status. In TIMSS 2023, this percentage was 36, that's not so many differences. On another hand, the percentage of students who going from the family with high socioeconomical status is just 80%. The same for the longitudinal study and before in 4th grade. This means a lot for our socioeconomical status in our country. And if we compare the result of students in these two groups, it's significant differences between them. The high socioeconomic status gives us a high achievement of students. And its challenge is to provide a school where environment, where socioeconomic status of students has a minimum impact to the achievement of students. But this is a big challenge in the next period, because to work on influence of socioeconomic status, I think need more time. But schools should give us an opportunity to learn every student, not just students with high socioeconomic status.
Thank you very much, Betty. And Marina, can you tell us how SES affects students' learning in Montenegro?
It's similar, as Betty said, it's similar in Montenegro. I would only say that students in Montenegro in higher and middle socioeconomic categories have higher, of course, mathematics achievements, and then those who are in the lower socioeconomic categories. And I wouldn't mention any percentages or points at this moment, but I would only emphasize that it is very important to have a policy that promotes equity and equal opportunities in education. That is very important, and it's obvious that the socioeconomic status influence a lot on the students' achievements. Thank you.
Thank you, and I would like to conclude with Dr. Vidoni. What is your insight about this topic?
Thank you very much. Well, the colleagues have already said there is a very strong relationship between socioeconomic status and outcomes. And, well, this is an issue, especially for us from a policy perspective, because this means that different family background and school context create different starting points and diverging trajectories. So this potentially has a very negative effect, or actually reduces the role of the school as a tool for social mobility. So in this situation, I mean, the only thing that we can try to do is, of course, to try to do movements or propose and support activities in two directions. One direction is equity, meaning try to support the weakest students in order to allow them to basically increase the results. But as it's coming up often, more and more often, we also must not forget about excellence. So it's important that we support not only the weakest to raise their situation, but also it's important that we don't forget the high achievers in order to excel in what they are doing. And let me make one last point in this, because of course, it's crucial to have the data that we are collecting here at grade 5 and grade 9, but the important part, at least for us, is not only the early grades. For us, the important part is how things evolve through time and how this finally translates into labor market outcomes. And the possibility of these students to excel. So, for example, we are trying now to start. We are aware that the individual situation, the individual trajectories matter a lot, and it's important to not just have cross-sectional evidence of what is actually happening in moments of time, but it's important to have an idea of how things actually evolve and trying to understand how different aspects, how different factors, let's say, affect the pathways that individuals follow. And that's why, for example, the European Commission is now starting a new project, a new longitudinal project that would take the stats from projects like TIMSS Longitudinal or other ICCS or other IEA studies like ICCS and ICILS, and then try to follow these individuals for 10 years, so until they graduate from university, and well, try to bring this new wealth of evidence. We shall see, I mean, the actual possibility of starting this project and bringing this new evidence will depend on countries interested, but we hope to meet again with additional information. Thank you.
I would like to thank all panelists for information you provided us today, and now we are open for questions from public or online. And while you prepare your questions, I'm kindly asking Christian to come to stage. I have heard that you have some presents for our panelists.
First of all, give the panelists a hand. Thank you very much. As a symbol of appreciation on behalf of the IEA, we have a little gift. It's of course your great effort during the study, but also I really want to thank you all for being so honest in your presentation today as panelists, not only focusing on what works, but also where to do changes. Thank you very much. So a gift for each of you. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you so much. Thank you. Thank you, Mona. There you are. Thank you so much. There you are. And thank you, Millers, again.
Thank you. Thank you.
There you are.
Thank you.
And just a short announcement. After we break out, we would like to invite all the on-site participants to take part in a group photo. It's of course voluntary, and you should know it will be used for public relations for the IEA, but it's also a very nice thing to think about in the future, thinking back on this very great event. Thank you.
Thank you, Christian. Do we have questions from public, Mar, or online questions? Online, no. Anyone from public present here? Second time, third time. Okay. Thank you for joining us. And as these events are designed with you in mind, we would like to hear your feedback and invite you to use the link in the chat at the end of this event to fill in a very short survey. For these people in public, please join us a lunch in a restaurant. And we thank you for joining us today and invite you to visit International Report online to dig further into TIMSS longitudinal data. Hvala.
Sorry, I'd just like to add to the moderator words. We invite you to also see the national reports that we have on our sites. Okay, of Examination Center, of course. Thank you.